You're listening to the Interconnect Hub podcast, powered by DataGryd. DataGryd is a premier data center provider located in the iconic 60 Hudson Street building. To learn more, visit www.datagryd.com. Enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome back to the Interconnect Hub. With you today is Tom Brown, President and CEO of DataGryd. Also joining us today is Christian Koch. He is the Director of Special Projects at PacketFabric, as well as the co-founder of NYNOG, the New York Network Operators Group. Tom, Christian, welcome.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Christian. Appreciate you coming on our episode today. If you could, for our audience, Christian, if you can just go ahead and give a background of not only PacketFabric, but just your broad range of your experience in the marketplace.
And first off, let me say thank you for having me on the podcast, Tom and Doug. Really excited to be here. So, as far as my background is concerned, I've spent a little bit over 15 years in network engineering roles before moving on to the planning and strategy side of things. I am currently the Director of Special Projects at PacketFabric and also co-founder of the New York Network Operators Group. PacketFabric, for those that don't know, is a global network as a service platform that connects you to thousands of destinations such as data centers, cloud service providers, content delivery networks, storage providers, and much more. And as far as the New York Network Operators Group is concerned, we are inspired by the North American Network Operators Group, which has been a long-running meeting for network operators in North America.
That's great, Christian. Thank you. I appreciate that. As far as PacketFabric is concerned, tell us a little bit about some of the exciting things that you guys have just recently announced. It's just a really cool platform that is addressing a lot of needs. If you could just let our listeners know a little bit about some of the projects that you're doing and some of the recent things that you guys have announced, because you guys are seeing a great deal of momentum in recent months.
Of course. And, most recently we announced some new funding from Digital Alpha, and we're really excited to have a new investor on board as we really look towards the next chapter of PacketFabric and really start to spearhead our growth. Like I mentioned earlier, we are a global network as a service platform. And what I mean by that is that, we go and we take the time to craft the underlay network, and that's the fiber, the wavelengths, the optical network. And then what we've done is we've built an overlay network on top of that, all in-house, all driven by software. And what that allows us to do is to provide a platform to customers out there looking to buy network services that want to connect their data center to the cloud, their data center to other specific partners, whether those are advertising partners or payment processing partners or content delivery networks. We provide that in a scalable Ethernet platform that allows these customers to order and provision services in minutes and pay as you grow, just as cloud computing has done, basically democratizing that infrastructure. No longer does everyone need to know or care what the underlay network looks like. All they need to do is have an interface to orchestrate that connectivity, and that's what we provide.
So when you think about that, Christian, right, and you think about where DataGryd plays in the marketplace at 60 Hudson Street, the iconic 60 Hudson Street, the historical significance about that, you and I often talk about some of the challenges that are inherent in here, and also some of the myths that are associated with 60 Hudson Street. And I just want to talk to you about a few of those. Really, if you deconstruct 60 Hudson Street, there's a couple of things that everybody needs to know. When I either speak on a panel or I speak with a prospective customer, I'm always posed with these questions. And one of them is, hey, is there a centralized meeting room here at 60 Hudson Street? The other is, hey, does DataGryd run the building? Hey, is DRT, are they in partnership with the building? Oh, I heard that risers are so congested that you can't pull any more fiber. Diversity is limited to PoE coming into the building. Power is limited. And just really want to take a few minutes to kind of talk about that, because this building is really critical, particularly as it relates to partnering with you guys at PacketFabric. And we just launched our 1 megawatt data hall that was just recently completed. And by all means, partnering with you guys will be part of our growth here and our success here as we continue to expand on the 60,000 square foot facility that we have. So let's talk about the, hey, is there a centralized meeting room? What's your thoughts that you can provide to our audience?
With any project you have, it's important and critical even to make sure that you do a desktop study, do all your research, reach out to friends and partners and obtain as much information as possible on a data center or carrier hotel or even network or even geographic region when you're kind of getting started with a project. And then second to that is to do ground truth. And by that is getting your feet on the ground, visiting the site, getting a tour from an expert on that building, whether that's someone that's been there a long time and works in building management, whether that's someone at the data center operator, whether that's even an electrical engineer or someone in the infrastructure engineering role within that building, so you can actually understand all of these intricacies that you've mentioned. There is no central meet me room, right? There are multiple providers of co-location services, and some of them are very network dense and some others are not very network dense. And all of that is information you're going to pull out of doing a desktop study and doing a ground truth, is understanding where that connectivity is to be able to understand where you need to put your equipment.
Really helpful, Christian. So to kind of disperse that myth, you're absolutely right. There is no central meet me area. And what DataGryd provides to the marketplace is the ability to connect to those various meet me areas. We have a product here that we've launched, which mitigates the cross-connect and interconnect challenge that exists not only here in New York, but throughout our industry. And we're able to provide a conduit and not just the centralized elevator shaft, but any diversity requirement, to your point of really vetting out the property to provide that conduit with a dense fiber cable to a partner to mitigate those cross-connect fees. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about is the riser, right? When you think about diversity, if you can just let our audience know a little bit about diversity within a building, right? And when you do that walkthrough, what you can do to really focus on what is it that you need for not only yourself, but potentially your customers and diversity. Can you shed some light on your knowledge of what exists here at 60 Hudson Street?
When you're looking at diversity within the building, you first need to actually kind of back up and understand, where that fiber is coming in through the streets. So where is that point of entry? How many point of entries are there? From there, you need to understand what is the path that conduit takes throughout the building. There might be multiple paths. There might be multiple paths that actually converge and therefore introduce higher risk. There might be completely diverse paths. So it's really key to understanding, how that conduit and those fiber paths move throughout the building. And there are multiple conduit systems in the building as there are point of entries. If there is a conduit that is full, you need to understand that it's typically, of the building's best interest to make sure that another conduit path is added. And these are all the kind of questions you need to ask when you're investigating something like this.
So as a point of clarity for our audience, there actually is 2 point of entries to kind of deconstruct 60 Hudson Street. There is 2 point of entries, one on Worth and one on Thomas, which is directly opposite one another, midway through the building here at 60 Hudson Street. The beauty of DataGryd is that we just are not limited to that central conduit system, which is a decommissioned elevator shaft, but we can go through various risers and clay ducts dating back to the origin of this building to provide that diversity and really to provide that unique turnkey solution for our customers. So we are not providing a cookie cutter solution, but yet a customized solution that meets the needs for diversity perspectives, because we do realize today with not only the hyperscalers, but everyone is honing in and really dissecting their diversity needs. Let's switch to power. One of the myths is power is limited. What's been your experience, Christian, with power and how it's related here at 60 Hudson Street?
As far as my experiences have gone, I've actually never ran into a time where power has been constrained. And I will say that I'm sure those instances have occurred, but that doesn't mean that power wasn't available. That means that, power in specific co-location suites, maybe operated by different providers, was at capacity, and then they later added more capacity.
So that's some good insight there, Christian. So what we have found here at the building, and one of the things that we did when we created the company back in 2011, is that we had the foresight to go out and directly get power from the utilities. So we actually have a separate power source from the building itself. The building today has ample power. It just happens to be contracted with all its tenants. So capacity right now is running roughly around a little over 50%. So there's ample power with the building. But when it comes to diversity, we have a large power source that comes into the building to the magnitude of 12 megawatts. And really what we're seeing, and certainly I'd like to get your input on it as well, Christian, is we're now seeing the density exponentially grow. Just a few years ago, a traditional footprint would be 3 to 5 kW. We're now seeing that growing to a norm now of 10 kW per footprint. And the beauty of DataGryd is we have that ability to disperse that heat. We just had an opportunity, which was just a few weeks ago. Someone inquired about having 30 kW per footprint, and we're able to go out and source these water-cooled cabinets that will enable that application to be bolted down here at 60 Hudson Street. Christian, give our audience your perspective on where you're seeing the power trends going in the marketplace, particularly here in the New York City metro.
Yeah, sure. So to kind of start with a little bit of context, I think hyperscalers and other big kind of forward-thinking operations teams at big content companies or even big enterprises have, long ago started to try to squeeze as much as they can out of a rack due to limited footprints in some locations. And I think now, where we used to see an average of probably around 5 kW per rack, I think we're actually starting to see that average jump up to around, between 10 and 15 kW per rack. And I expect we continue to see that grow, especially when there's a robust and ample power supply inside the co-location facility.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we took into account, and now we're seeing it right before our eyes. One other question before we kind of wrap up our conversation, Christian, is if you can talk to the audience about the emerging technologies and how this building, 60 Hudson Street, is well positioned for the impact of 5G, AI, IoT, right? These are all buzzwords that you and I experience. We talk about them at our meetings. But truly the impact and how well positioned DataGryd is and 60 Hudson Street. Please share that with the audience.
Sure. And look, this is not limited to any specific technology. And each of these kind of new emerging technologies are going to drive different requirements. I think the key to understand here is that data centers and connectivity are at the foundation of any technology. So having a densely connected building like 60 Hudson that has space, power, and access to rich ecosystems of connectivity providers, such as PacketFabric, such as fiber providers in the area like Zenfi and Zayo. The data center, especially 60 Hudson here in the New York City area, are right at the forefront of being, that base foundation to house companies that are doing anything with any of these new technologies.
Christian, I really appreciate your perspective. Certainly your experience it gives our listeners a better understanding of what this building is all about. But I look forward to continuing to host folks here at 60 Hudson Street for tours with our new Mega Suite 1 megawatt data hall. And we certainly look forward to partnering with PacketFabric. And I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate you having me here. And it was always great talking to you.
You've been listening to the Interconnect Hub podcast powered by DataGryd. DataGryd is a premier data center provider located in the iconic 60 Hudson Street building. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you consume your audio. To learn more about DataGryd and the services they provide, visit www.datagryd.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.